Today on Mother Mayhem.
What happens if you build in recovery afterward instead of pretending that you're going to be fine or thinking you're going to be fine? Welcome back to Mother Mayhem, the podcast for daughters of narcissistic and emotionally limited mothers. I'm your host, Heather Gray. And this week, daughters, well, this is one of those weeks that shows us the power of mayhem and this community. This week, I introduce you to Henry, and Henry is the husband of a daughter. He's written in as a witness to his wife's story and with struggles of his own in how to reach and help his wife, Elizabeth. And Henry and Elizabeth, I named you after the couple in the show, Madam Secretary. They had to face a lot together, communicate a lot, and really valued being on the same team, even when emotions got really fraught and intense. And that sounds like what the two of you have been managing together too. Now, Henry, here's your letter, and I'm going to find all of you on the other side. Hi, Heather. My wife and I have been listening to your podcast together for quite a while, and I just have to thank you for what you're doing. I know mine isn't the only family you're helping. I do believe there's a ripple effect for families that when one person heals, everyone benefits. I can see how the way you're helping my wife is helping us as a couple, and I can see the impact in how we both take care of our kids now. You can't listen to a show about childhood trauma without making sure you're doing the opposite of everything you hear these awful mothers do to their kids. My wife came to me some time ago and told me about your show and said that she thinks it's about her and her mom, but that the intensity of it all becomes too much sometimes, and she forgets the things you say, or she starts to doubt whether or not she should even be listening to the show because maybe it doesn't apply to her. She told me she feels guilty listening to it, like she's a bad daughter, or like her mom will find out, but also says that the women who write into you feel like her friends and that she thinks of them as she goes about her day and hopes that they are okay. So we've been listening for a while now, and I've encouraged her to reach out to you with her story and questions, but she just isn't ready. I won't share her story with you, but I will always hope that she'll someday tell you herself. I thought I could tell you mine, and somehow maybe you'd be able to still help us. Together, my wife and I have listened in as many a mother has lost their minds over their daughter's wedding, and us too. And like other women who have written in, it does seem like my mother-in-law's special brand of crazy got unleashed once she realized my wife and I were really serious. And like many stories you have heard and told, she has created absolute chaos in our lives for years now. I don't feel the need to regale you with the tales or the "are you fucking kidding me's" because I'm confident you know the drill of what I'm talking about. I just really need your help. I need you to help me help my wife. We have 2 daughters, ages 7 and 10, and our little life as a family of 4 is really solid. My mother-in-law lives about 45 minutes away from us, and over the years, we've gotten pretty good at keeping low profiles with her. My wife is rarely alone with her because I make sure to try to stay in the room or rope in another family member to be there, and my mother-in-law is never alone with the kids. I am hesitant to say this because my wife knows I'm writing in, and if you use this episode on the show, she'll have to hear me tell you that if it were up to me, I would just have us go no contact with the woman. She's horrific and awful. She sucks the oxygen out of every room she's in and makes everything feel heavy and hard. My wife's sister struggles too. Both women are in an endless fight to please a woman who will never let herself be pleased, and she has only become more nasty since their dad died 4 years ago. The girls feel an obligation to look after their mother and check in on her because their dad would have wanted them to, but the strain leaves a mark on both of them. Her sister can't even listen to your show because she says it all hurts so much. It is really hard to sit by and just watch. I'm happy to be the protector because that actually gives me a job, but just watching the effects of her mother on my wife is a tremendous thing to have to watch. My wife struggles before seeing her mom from the day she knows she's going to have to, and sometimes for as long as 5 days or a week after. She becomes jittery, jumpy, and second guesses herself about everything. The day after, she can't seem to leave bed for hours. She'll function for our girls and then sleep or lie down. I watch my mother-in-law just turn out my wife's light. That's what it feels like. That I have this special woman who lights up playing on the swing saucer with her girls. And she's also the woman who will change outfits 4 times before going to a neighbor's barbecue. She'll first put on a dress that is really pretty, but she'll worry that it'll send a message that she doesn't want to get dirty and wouldn't want to help. And she would always want the hostess to know that she wants to help. Then she'll put on shorts and a tee and worry that she's too casual and showing disrespect. My wife is a member of a super annoying gym where you have to pre-sign up for classes. You can't just show up, and if there aren't enough members signed up, they don't have the class. My wife, she looks at classes where people have signed up, perhaps not enough people. She will sign up to those classes so that people who actually want to take the class get to. And of course, it doesn't matter to her at all what class she might have actually wanted to take herself. Despite all of the crazy and all of the evidence and all of the ways her body reacts to her mother, my wife still doubts she's a daughter. So not only do I witness and listen to the awful things her mother said or did, I then am listening to my wife analyze whether or not it was really that bad and if she has the right to be upset. She's the best mom for her girls, and the 3 of them have a good connection. My wife and I also share a value of building individual relationships with our kids, each taking turns to have one time with each daughter regularly and consistently. My wife struggles with confidence as a mom. She doesn't see how awesome she is. She just says things like, I want them to know they can come to me with anything, and doesn't quite seem to be able to understand that they already do. We have neighbor kids that we have looked after while their parents tend to an aging parent. The older girl is 12 and got her period. She knocked on our door crying, asked to talk to my wife, and my wife helped her and spent hours with her taking care of her and explaining everything to her because the girl's mom was so consumed with caregiving that she missed it. My wife doesn't see what a big deal that is, that she was seen as the safe person to talk to. I keep waiting for my wife to see the evidence of her worth, how she's loved, how she has friends who love her, how much I love her, and how much our girls love her. She loses so much to her fears, to perseverating, ruminating, second-guessing, that sometimes it doesn't feel like she's actually in her life as much as it feels like she's observing her life through her mother's lens. And as I've heard you say, we know her mother's lens is broken. My wife is in therapy, but I never hear her talk about it the way I hear her talk about your show. I think that's because you and the other daughters probably talk for her. And in therapy, she has to talk for herself and name things that she doubts even happened. It's an awful circle. I want to help, but standing by and watching has just made me so angry. I don't know how to help and feel like everything I do is so insignificant compared to the wrath and power her mom has. I don't know my questions, but those are my struggles. My wife and I will listen together, and if you could just talk to us, that would mean a lot. I have a feeling, I'm getting emotional. Oh my goodness. I have a feeling I'm not the only husband who listens and is so thankful you help the wives. And to other husbands listening, don't listen to the crying. It'll turn you off. Stay strong. I don't always think my love is enough, but it just has to be. Thanks, Heather, and thanks everyone listening for sharing your show with a guy. I appreciate you all. Oh, Henry, oh my goodness, dude. Thank you so much for taking a chance on me here and on Mayhem. I value your trust and I appreciate you allowing us the privilege of sitting with you and your wife as you both navigate all of this pain and the path you're on. Everyone here sees you and believes you and is really moved by you and your commitment to your family. I've heard from other daughters that they listen with their husbands too. It's pretty special to know that conversations we can have here continue to bring people together toward healing. And hello to you, Elizabeth. I know this conversation must be all kinds of awkward for you, and it might make you really nervous. I'm glad you're here, and it's important to me that you know, Elizabeth, that we don't need to know your story in order to see you and believe you. Your body has already told us everything we need to know, and we believe your body. Full stop. We believe you. I understand the daughter instinct you have to pull back from your story, to doubt it, to minimize it. That does make a lot of sense to me. And I think if you take a moment and think back to other daughter shares that you've heard on the show, you'll remember that other daughters have shared this with me too, that they listen to the show, but they think that they don't quite belong, that maybe their stories aren't that bad, or that they were just too sensitive. And you have probably also heard them talk about the guilt that comes with thinking that you might be a daughter. And Elizabeth, I have a sneaky suspicion that you have never once listened to any of these shares and just turned the episode off because you thought the daughter was lying or over-exaggerating. I very much doubt you have ever listened to a daughter doubt her story and think to yourself, yeah, Heather, you just got suckered by a sob story. Can't you tell this one is just super sensitive and overreacting? Not once, Elizabeth, have you thought any of that. And what's true for them is true for you, sister, because there is something I know about our little show over here. We do have an international audience, as we have people listening from all over the world, but they don't find mayhem just because they tripped over it. They had to go looking for it. So at one point, your relationship with your mother hurt you enough that you went looking for us. And then at another point, it all resonated so much that your brain leapt in to protect you. Those things don't happen to people when shows like mine don't resonate. If the Mayhem story wasn't your story too, your body would not react to it so personally. It wouldn't register that we were talking about it and its experiences. Your body is telling you the truth. It's reacting to hearing your story or a similar story in someone else's words. Your body is reacting because it resonates so much, maybe even a little bit too much. One of the things we'll explore together in our conversation is if maybe this just isn't the right time for you to listen to the show. It may be too much for your system to hold, but another possibility here is that you need some help holding your story. And for a little while here, I think I might be able to help you do that. Now, I realized a couple of things when I took a little bit of a break from the show. And one of the things I really had to give some thought to is that I can't keep treating every single episode like its own separate entity, as if you all don't listen to this show regularly. I think sometimes when I'm answering letters, I'm treating every question as if it's the first time any of you are hearing me talk about these things. But then as a result, I end up in the weeds teaching you about your nervous systems, and I can't keep doing that for every conversation. It's dragging us down a little bit. And Elizabeth, in this instance, Henry already let the cat out of the bag. You guys listen to the show often, and you listen with him, and you've heard a lot of the conversations I've already had with daughters, which means you think everything I'm saying is true for them. It's just not true for you. So yes, this is a struggle because both your trauma and your nervous system, but we're going to skip over the psychobabble of it all and just cut to the chase a little bit. I know going into this that you aren't going to believe me, but I also know going into this that you would believe me if I were talking to another daughter right now. There's nothing I can say now to get you to believe me, but I can tell you that you don't actually have to believe your story in order to start healing. Healing starts with the question, with the noticing of your experience, with recognizing its impact, and your questioning if it's a problem. Elizabeth, I think one of the things that may be happening here is that you are waiting for certainty. You are looking for the moment where all doubt disappears and you finally know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you belong inside of this conversation. But I talk to daughters all the time, and they never get the kind of proof they're hoping for. They don't get the elusive confession. Their mothers never just sit down and say, "You're right, that happened and it hurt you." Most daughters are left looking at a lifetime of experiences and asking themselves what those experiences mean. Elizabeth, my question for you here is actually this: how much evidence do you need? What are you hoping for? You've listened to the stories, you've recognized yourself in them, you've had reactions strong enough that Henry felt compelled to write a letter. I think you're waiting for certainty, and my observation when it comes to helping you daughters be certain is you'll all just end up moving the line. Here's what I see about this when connecting it to daughters. The question a lot of you keep asking is whether or not you officially belong inside of this conversation. Whether your mother was narcissistic enough or emotionally limited enough or hurtful enough to qualify you as being a daughter. But what actually changes if the answer is no? If your mother wasn't narcissistic enough, would your hurt just suddenly disappear? Would your anxiety go away? Would your reactions disappear? Would the years you spent struggling suddenly stop counting? You still found the show and recognized yourself inside of these conversations. Your husband felt concerned enough to write this letter, and your body's reacting to all of it. So we're not really in a debate here, are we? Some daughters get so focused on proving that what happened was bad enough that they never stop to ask the more important question: did it affect me? And Elizabeth, I don't think there's much debate here. It did affect you. We can see that from here. But the struggle you're having is trusting your own experience. And that's okay. That's something we can work with. You guys have probably heard me share this story before, but one of the absolute coolest things I've ever learned as a therapist came from a client years and years ago. She had, her husband had OCD, and he was scared and frantic about a lot of things. So my client would say to him, "Honey, trust my lens." That was their agreement, that he would trust her lens. And Elizabeth, that's your challenge right now too, to trust my lens, to trust Henry's lens, and to use that trust to move through more healing until you can trust yourself. I know you probably think you can't heal until you trust yourself, but something that the Mayhem community is teaching me over and over and over again is that self-trust is one of the last things to click into place for you daughters. Oftentimes, the first step is being seen and believed and validated by other daughters several times on repeat before daughters can believe those things for themselves. So remember in school when teachers taught us we needed to suspend disbelief? Why they taught us that? I don't really have a clue, but I remember the phrase. Probably it was connected to English, right? Like when we were reading books, we had to suspend disbelief. But that phrase, I'm getting off track. Sorry, Elizabeth. But that phrase has always struck with me because you, Henry, and we're going to keep talking, and I am going to ask that you suspend your disbelief. This is something we see inside of Mayhem a lot. A daughter's going to share something she doubted for years, and before she can talk herself out of it, other women are already nodding along because they lived it too. Sometimes we borrow certainty from one another until we can create it on our own. And I am going to give you a breather here while I move over just a bit and talk to Henry. Hi, Henry. I'm so really, really very glad you wrote in, and I hope it's okay with you that I started with Elizabeth first. There are a lot of threads in this conversation that are important for us to talk about, but I needed to tackle the elephant in the room first. And I wanted to give you language for how to tackle it inside your home and with Elizabeth going forward. I think it's okay in moments where you see her pain or her tension so clearly to invite her to trust your lens. Doing that offers her a permission slip, a way out of the rigid way her nervous system has learned to keep itself safe. You might see that Elizabeth is ruminating or perseverating on something, or perhaps you see her start to wall off or shut down. And I imagine, of course, that those moments are hard and she might feel unreachable to you, and that's its own kind of hard in its own right. But one way you might be able to connect with her is by reaching towards her with that invitation. Trust my lens. Trust my lens, Elizabeth. No one cares what you wear to the barbecue, but if I have a vote, I vote for the pretty dress, or I vote for the thing you're comfortable in. Trust my lens, Elizabeth. Our girls know you and love you. Trust my lens, Elizabeth. She really was that bad. She really did make an unfair comment. She really is impossible to please. And Henry, my new friend here, I need you to trust my lens. You really are doing enough. You're listening to the podcast with your wife. You're supporting her in therapy. You're listening to her worries. You're holding fort with the kids when she needs more time and space. Just because your wife is still hurting doesn't mean that you aren't doing enough or loving her enough. It just really means that what she has lived through really has been that bad. And now I want to talk to you both because I think I want to share what I think you're all bumping up against here. And that's the reality that this is really, really hard to heal in the environments that made you sick. I know that's hard to hear because your house is safe. Your mother lives 45 minutes away and she's never alone with Elizabeth, and Elizabeth is as protected as she can be from her mom. All of that is true, but Elizabeth, your body is telling us something really important. It goes into lockdown in anticipation of seeing your mom and for days afterwards. Being connected to your mom is costing you days of your life each time you see her, even when the visits are supposedly quote unquote short or seemingly inconsequential. And I know, Henry, you aren't okay with it, but I imagine, Elizabeth, that you've become more resigned to it because you're used to it. Your whole body is used to the song and dance and pony show, and it knows what it has to go through every single time you encounter your mom. And I can almost hear you saying it is what it is. But what it is can shift and it can move. And I know that as soon as you hear me going on about this, you probably think I'm going to get on the no contact or even lower contact bandwagon. And I want to remind you of the value we have on the show. We don't push that agenda like other recovery spaces do, but neither are we going to give carte blanche to your values about staying in contact, and no way in hell are we resigning ourselves to the idea that Elizabeth loses days of her life to contact with her mom, and all Henry can do is sit by and watch, take care of the kids, and wait for it to pass. That's no kind of life for any of you. We aren't tolerating that around here. This is what I think we have to do. We have to see what the current arrangement and constellation of connection is costing you. And it seems like it's pretty high. Again, Elizabeth, trust our lens on that one, but it's high and we want to mitigate that cost as much as we can. First, I just want you guys to get curious. If the current arrangement is costing you days of your life, then let's stop assuming that this is the only way contact can happen. You guys are likely on some of this already, as Henry has described you all having lower contact, but I don't want to make a mistake of ignoring the obvious, so let's check, because every invitation doesn't need to be a yes, and maybe you never meet in someone's home, but you're always meeting in a public place. I imagine that we might be able to make visits shorter and we can work to reduce the topics of conversations to the ones that don't tax your energy. I think that there could maybe be ways of seeing your mom or spending time with her that don't tax you and your reserves as other things might. But more than the logistics of all of this, what I'm actually wondering here is, Elizabeth, how much of this is about seeing your mom as opposed to having to manage her? I wonder if your exhaustion is coming less from contact with your mother and more from that management piece. Because one of the things I wonder, Elizabeth, is whether the hardest part is actually seeing your mom. I wonder how much energy here is getting spent managing your mom. How much of this exhaustion is you trying to keep the peace in a game of prevent defense, trying to manage her reactions and prevent her from thinking something or saying something or doing something? How much of all of this are you in some kind of game trying to avoid conflict? Because none of those things are visits by any stretch of the imagination. They're work. And if every interaction requires that level of effort, then of course you're going to be exhausted afterward. I think what I want for you is permission to start running a couple of experiments. What happens if the visit is shorter? What happens if you leave earlier? Can you say no sometimes? And you guys, I think we have to think about building in recovery time and maybe also that anticipatory time right into the plan. Visits with my own mother-in-law, they were an absolute disaster most times. And my husband would bring all of the energy that they created back into our home. And then it would just kind of sit over us like this black cloud because he'd get stoic and silent. So we started making a plan that after seeing her, we'd visit his grandmother, who knew all about his mom and she knew too how to make us laugh about things that would have normally made us cry otherwise. And so we debriefed with Graham. We stopped for ice cream. I blasted the radio and sang at the top of my lungs. He notably did not partake in that, but he indulged me. And I had full-on car concerts. What happens if you build in recovery afterward instead of pretending that you're going to be fine or thinking you're going to be fine? What can it look like if your mom has a little less access to your time, your energy, your emotions, your nervous system? I feel like, Elizabeth, that your body is giving us really good information about what it can tolerate, what it can't tolerate, and what feels possible for your body. And we believe your body. And I think that this is the conversation I want you and Henry to start having. Not whether or not contact is wrong and not whether or not your mom deserves it or doesn't deserve it. I want you to start asking a different question. If I'm choosing connection, what shape does that connection need to take so it doesn't keep costing me so many days of my life? But also, you guys, I'm just going to keep it real with both of you here right now. I have to say the hard thing out loud. Henry, you love Elizabeth and you want to take care of her and support her, and you want her to know that you're on her side. I feel that coming out of your pores in every word of this letter. I admire you for it and I respect you for it. And Elizabeth, we know how crucial he is to your healing and to your recovery. I want to keep you all on the same page, and I'm hesitant to bring up anything to cause tension, but there is something else that is true in this conversation, and that's the fact that, Henry, you are allowed to have boundaries of your own here. You get to decide some things for yourself around what you'll participate in, what you won't participate in, and these are really hard conversations to have. But we do trust your lens, and just because we're assigning you that role does not mean that you are some sacrificial lamb yourself. You get to put an oxygen mask on yourself, and I want to make sure that you're doing so. That doesn't have to be anything so bold as I'm not coming on visits anymore, although it could be, but it might be smaller, like part of the recovery plan after you've looked after Elizabeth and the kids is you have some kickback time for yourself, something you do to blow off the steam or the tension and whatever is being built up inside of you. You exist in this relationship too. And Henry, it's really important that you remember that one. When one person has more stuff than the other person, it is really easy to start giving yourself away. Ask me how I know about that one. My husband has a spinal cord injury, and he was paralyzed right when he decided to go back to school for a second career. And we stuck with that plan, and he stuck with that plan rather as a paraplegic. And through it all, his mom was batshit crazy. And that boy, well, suffice it to say, he came with some stuff. He had a pile. And it was so easy to say, he has this, he can't, I have to, I can't expect him to. After all, life is always going to be easier for me. I don't have these kinds of problems. I know all too well how we can tip the scales away from ourselves in the name of love or teamwork and partnership. And all I can tell you is careful, careful, careful. Now, I probably shared this story on the show too at some point, but after my husband initially recovered from his injury, I got him into adaptive skiing. And the way that the days went on the mountain is that they'd ski in the morning, they'd break for lunch, and then they'd head back to the mountain in the afternoon. The lunchroom ended up getting really warm, and my husband would take his coat off. And then from his wheelchair, he would try to put on his thick winter coat back on while still being in his wheelchair. So, just walk yourselves through that for a second. Putting on a coat in a chair with legs you can't move. Putting on that coat, the coat ends up over the back of the chair instead of across his own back. So I was helping him, and a woman put her arm on mine, pulled me aside, and said, "Careful. If you get in the habit of doing that, you will be doing that for the rest of his life." And when put that way, well, I didn't like thinking that I would always be helping him put on his coat, so I held back and I let him struggle until he found his own way of getting a coat on. And that woman now lives rent-free in my head. I owe her so much rent, actually, because it was such a small thing she taught me, but to consider myself when helping him, and things like his mother or his injury or his schedule for medical school training at the time, all of them were a lot. Any of them could have buried either of us. All together, whew, that was a lot. So I started stopping and considering what I was willing to do for the rest of my life, and I made choices from there. So I do the grocery shopping because, yeah, he could figure out a way to get groceries, but honestly, not worth it to me. But yes, he does his own laundry, and figure that one out for a second. Reaching in and pulling out clothes from the back of the washer or dryer, folding them from a seated position, it is a gigantic pain in the fucking ass. But also, it's not grocery shopping. And I couldn't resign myself to doing every single thing that was easier for me than him, because that would have been everything. Henry, consider yourself inside of this relationship. You are clearly in it for the long game, which means you have to consider your wellness for the long game. And now, Elizabeth, I'm hoping you and I could spend some time together, because something I'm hearing in Henry's letter here is obviously that he loves you. But also, sister, he really wants you to love yourself. He wants you to see yourself the way he does. He wants you to be able to wear a dress without thinking that it sends a message to the host about your willingness to help. He loves your life with your little micro family of 4, and he wants you to see how important your role is in that, how happy you make him, and the girls, and how much everyone loves you. He's not telling you this, but I can guess, and I can imagine a little bit, that he wishes his love were enough. And also, it's really hard to watch your mom make you smaller, doubt yourself, question yourself as a mom, and love yourself even less. I might have this wrong, Henry, but I also think you're asking me for help with this part. So here we go, Elizabeth. Here's what I'd like us to consider together. I'm wondering whose opinion gets to matter most in your life. Because one of the things that stood out to me in Henry's letter is how hard on yourself you are, how you struggle to believe that your good intentions are going to be trusted. I see you doubting whether or not you're enough, and we know you started asking that question because of your mom, but we have got to update your story of yourself somehow because you have a husband and 2 girls who love you. You have neighbors who entrust you with their kids while they manage a family health crisis, and people who want you at their barbecues. Elizabeth, the evidence of your life suggests that the people in your life who you care about and who love you already believe that you were enough. But we know your mom made you think otherwise. We know looking in her direction for affection and validation is looking toward an empty well. How long are you going to look back at a well that you already know has nothing to give you? Elizabeth, sweetie, the dress isn't really about the dress. And even your anxiety and hypervigilance isn't about your anxiety or your hypervigilance. Underneath all of this is a woman whose mother still gets an awfully large vote in determining how she sees herself. And that is what I'm urging you to look at here. You have people around you who see your value, your kindness, your effort, your heart. The evidence is right there, Elizabeth. You don't even need to look that hard for it. It is right there. The question really is whether or not you are willing to let it count. Because if your mom says you're not enough and Henry says you are, whose voice wins? If your mother implies that you're selfish and your daughters experience you as loving and devoted, where does that pendulum end up swinging, girlfriend? If your mother questions you and your actual life tells a completely different story, who, my friend, are you going to believe? I think that is the question underneath so much of what we're actually talking about today. Who gets to be the authority on who Elizabeth is? Because I think your mom has occupied that position for a really long time. And maybe one of the next steps in healing is not getting her to see you differently. Maybe it's deciding that she no longer gets that final say. And Elizabeth, you may not be ready for us yet, but Mayhem is ready for you, sister. We'd love to have you inside our community. I can hear all of the voices in your head talking you out of that one. But I'm just going to remind you of my invitation to trust my lens. We already see you. We already believe you, and you already belong. I really hope you'll consider giving us a chance to earn more of your trust. We'd really love to have you. Elizabeth and Henry, you guys, thank you so much for being members of Mayhem and for the privilege of this conversation. What a cool thing you just let me help you do. I hope you're going to feel like I've done right by you, and I know that this is a conversation that's going to help a lot of daughters and their spouses have important conversations in their houses too. Anyone who wants this conversation to continue here on Mayhem, do write in. You can always send me a letter, heather@mayhemdaughters.com. All of you are in this incredible community of women and spouses and partners and families from around the world. All of you are in this together. And I, for sure, most definitely, am in it with you too. Bye for now. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you felt seen, understood, and a little less alone in whatever it is you're carrying. The things we talk about here, your mother wound, trauma, identity, and healing, well, they were never meant to be worked through alone. Understanding matters, of course it does, but healing happens inside of relationship. That is one of the biggest things I have learned over the years of having these conversations with all of you daughters. It's also why I created Mayhem Daughters. Mayhem Daughters is my private online community for daughters of narcissistic and emotionally limited mothers. It's where the conversation continues after the episode ends. It's where daughters connect with one another, ask questions, receive support, and practice the work of healing together. Every week, we gather for Thursday Night Mayhem, our live community gathering. And throughout the week, daughters support one another inside a space built specifically for this kind of work. Because there comes a point when another podcast episode isn't actually what you need the most. Sometimes what you need is a place where you don't have to explain yourself so much, where you're understood, and where you can stop doing this work alone. That's what we've built inside of Mayhem Daughters. You can learn more at mayhemdaughters.com/community. If today's conversation resonated with you, please consider sharing it with another daughter who might need it. Your shares and reviews help more women find these conversations. And if you have a story, a question, or a reflection of your own, I'd love to hear from you. You can send me a message at heather@mayhemdaughters.com. And lastly, a heartfelt thank you to Heather Clark. She edits the show and has had my back for nearly a decade. There are very few people who have witnessed as much of Mayhem's evolution as she has, and I'm deeply grateful to have her beside me as I do this. This isn't just a podcast, it's a community. We see you, we believe you, and you already belong. And I'm so very glad you're here.